Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to go through each step of the analytical writing process that we know so far. This connects to essential question 1, what makes analytical writing different from other types? Essential question number 2, who are the likely readers and audience of this form of writing? And essential question number 4, what kind of organization could be used in this form of writing? As we go through the process, I'm going to refer to the learning target. So the first piece is the content number 1. To effectively address all parts of the task, we do so by breaking down that prompt properly. So let's look briefly at what that looks like. This is for the prompt from yesterday. That prompt read, the author uses the journal structure to relate his experiences aboard a ship traveling from Pennsylvania to California. Write an essay analyzing how this structure conveys the experience of a journey at sea. Use evidence from the passage to support your response. Remember, our 3 ways that we effectively address all parts of the task is to find those 2 boldface skills. We find them by highlighting the description of the task, underlining the need for evidence, and then searching for the boldface skills. And here it is. And then the 2 boldface skills in this prompt are how the structure is one of the 2 things that you need. So you have to think about what the structure of this piece is, and then conveys the experience of a journey at sea would be the second skill. So you have to think about how it does in fact convey. So what is the structure and how does it convey that journey? And that by doing so, you will have effectively looked at all parts of that task. After we do that, we then actually head into our next part, which is a learning target from the organization category. And that is to organization number 3, to preview what's to follow using a thesis statement. We talk about how in our thesis statement, we want to address what we're going to cover in the prompt. We don't restate the prompt. We need to make sure that we explain what we're about to talk about as it addresses the skills found in that prompt. So in the case of this particular essay that was written by the other student, the exemplar student, we are looking at the following thesis statement. So this author wrote this following thesis statement. It was, the experience of the journey at sea is shown through the journal structure by the thoughts of the main character, listing daily weather, and listing daily events. You can find this thesis in their opening paragraph of the essay we read yesterday. So they are in fact being specific that it's a journal structure, and then they explain how it conveys the experience at sea, mentioning that it talks about the thoughts of the main character as the one point, how it talks about listing the daily weather as another point, and how it's listing daily events as a final point, fully addressing both boldface skills found in that prompt. So once you go about doing that, as we go back into our learning target packet, the next idea that we need to address is organization number 1, to organize our ideas using an outline, and obviously using our thesis statement to break down and set up that outline. But there are a couple other learning targets embedded into the outline. We also, while we're making that outline, are considering what our claims are. So that's content 2. We need to develop multiple claims, 2 or more claims to address, to respond in our analytical essay. In other words, a 3-paragraph essay is not addressing the task. It needs to have more than 1 body paragraph. We need multiple body paragraphs because we need multiple claims in the essay. That ties in to that idea that we should make sure that obviously our body is specific and we figured out how we want to make sure that our outline is set up in a proper, organized way. So you read the informative piece yesterday, so you got to see that this essay was in fact in a nice organized method. If you go back and forth into that essay and then just keep looking back at the passage, you're able to easily copy and paste down each part of that essay in a very quick and efficient manner, because we see the indented line that shows where the paragraphs change. Just like when we have our outline, we see that number representing when the paragraph changes. So they begin with their intro, where they have that nice thesis statement. And then each of their body paragraphs is nicely structured with a new claim. They have multiple claims in this essay. Their first claim, the thoughts of the main character, which is shown first in their thesis. Their second body paragraph, the structure lists daily weather, which is the second thing listed in their thesis. Their third body paragraph is the structure shows daily events, which was the final thing they mentioned in their thesis as they're talking about that journal structure. And they do the thing that brings it all full circle by restating that thesis statement all over again in that conclusion. So it is a nicely organized essay that easily could translate into this particular outline because it was nicely organized to begin with. So it's easy to figure out how they probably structured their outline based on how smooth it was for their essay, which only probably took place because they had a nice outline before they wrote it to begin with. The next area ties into 2 learning targets. This is the final step we've talked about until today. That's number 3, to cite evidence. We use quotation marks. We make sure that evidence fully connects to our thesis nicely. And we do have to make sure, learning target number 4, that we have substantial references. In other words, we have enough relevant evidence. So not only does it connect to our areas of our thesis statement, we have at least one really, really good piece of evidence for every claim. And since our claims are organized in separate paragraphs, we obviously need a piece of evidence in every body paragraph. Keep in mind, in the case of this particular essay, we see this author, as we probably discussed yesterday, we see this author do an excellent job of using multiple pieces of evidence throughout their essay. They don't just use one particular piece of evidence in their essay. You can see that they've clearly used multiple pieces of evidence in their essay. Notice how it's fully done with quotation marks around it, as we discussed yesterday, and it's easy to find because of the quotation marks. It's word for word from the passage. After you've gotten all of your pieces of evidence into that outline, you have yourself a wonderful outline that you can use to start figuring out how to rough draft. Notice this author, they were not weak in their evidence. They were substantial. They actually have 2 evidences per body paragraph that they read over to make sure that it matched nicely with their claim, that connected nicely with their thesis statement, and then they had this outline ready to go to start being able to structure their body paragraphs, which is a great step and which is the step we are currently on. So that brings us to today. Learning target number 5, to analyze how your claims develop over the course of the text with both explicit and implicit meanings. And that seems like a lot to think about. Explicit and implicit meanings. Well, what does that mean? Explicit meanings is first of all, learning target number 5 is everything you have to say about your evidence. This is the information you say that connects your evidence to your claim. This is your words. You make the explicit meanings. You make the implicit meanings. This is all your words. And this all follows your evidence. This is the analysis. This is the meat of your essay in your body paragraphs. Explicit meanings is when you say ideas that you found directly stated in your evidence. It's found directly in the evidence. You mention it, and it does support nicely with your thesis statement. Let's look at what that looks like. So this is paragraph number 3, body paragraph number 2 of the essay from yesterday. Notice their evidence is right here. It says, during a storm Saturday night, our rudder gave way and required time to render it useful the next morning. Now, explicit analysis is where you explain in your own words something you found directly in the evidence that ties in to your claim. So remember, their claim is the structure lists daily weather. And that weather is always an important factor for things outdoors, especially at sea. This evidence right here is basically a great piece of evidence to support the list of weather because they talk about that storm here. Let's see what kind of analysis they give. It says, this quote shows the weather delayed their trip, but was not a major problem. Now, if we look at this piece of evidence, or this analysis, is it explicit? Is it directly found in that evidence? It says weather delayed their trip. Well, up in the evidence it says rudder gave way after the storm and required some time to fix. So saying that a storm broke a rudder and it required some time, yes, it's explicit analysis because they're basically just restating that the weather delayed their trip word for word from what the evidence already gives. It's not a hidden meaning. It's directly stated in that evidence. It also says render it useful the next morning, and in their analysis they say but was not a major problem. So this is explicit analysis as well. They're sort of rephrasing their evidence, but it's already really stated in the evidence as well, but they're restating it to help connect it to the idea that the structure listed those daily weather ideas. Let's keep going and let's talk about implicit analysis. Implicit analysis is hidden. It's where you use your background knowledge, the thoughts you have in your own head, and you find and interpret the hidden meaning in your evidence. This is the stronger type of analysis because it's the most creative. It's not directly stated. It's not repeating the evidence. It's finding a new way of looking at the evidence and connecting it nicely back to your claim. Remember, the claim here is the structure lists daily weather. And in this case, this new piece of evidence says, all hands have again been engaged catching water with tin cup for a bottle. So that evidence seems rather vague here. Hopefully they were able to pull something that helps to explain its connection to the structure and the daily weather. It says this quote shows the weather also provided for the passengers. So right here, this quote shows the weather provided for the passengers. It's not really restating. If they restated it, if it was explicit analysis, they would say, this shows that the passengers got water from the rain that was falling. That would be explicit, but that's not what it says here. This is implicit analysis. They explain the importance behind what is happening here. And that importance is that the weather was a good thing. The weather helped provide water that the passengers needed for survival. So see how it's implicit. They use their knowledge of what they know about when someone catches water and put it in a cup. And they're able to explain in that creative way how the weather was actually beneficial in that journal for communicating in that journal their needs for surviving on the journey at sea. That's implicit analysis. It's important to have a mix. You can have some explicit, but you definitely need that implicit layer when you're not just restating the evidence, but you're actually looking closely at it and making a hidden connection, a creative connection that other people might not be able to notice. And really, that is the bulk of what you need to have in your body paragraphs. So today I want you to start practicing making a body paragraph from your outline. I want you to think about how you're going to lead in that paragraph. How are you going to state your claim that you have as a label from your outline? How are you going to put that in a full sentence? How are you going to lead into your evidence properly? Are you going to make sure you put quotation marks around that evidence? And the most challenging of all, learning target number 5, to analyze implicitly and explicitly. How are you going to look at that evidence and communicate in words that connection that you made to your claim for that paragraph? Are you going to just restate the evidence and make it all explicit? Or are you going to look closely at the evidence and be implicit and look for those hidden creative things that actually show your thesis statement nicely and easily and in a way that your reader understands? We're going to practice this a lot, but really that's the nature of analysis, to look at evidence and think about it and communicate it both explicitly and implicitly to your reader. Go ahead and get practicing on a body paragraph.